You are joining us live from Ithaca, New York, home to Cornell University. I am Chris Wofford.
And I'm Robert Bloomfield.
Welcome to today's show, audience. Game On. We're going to talk about gamification as it relates to employee engagement and everything that has to do with that. A note to our viewers really quickly, there's going to be a lot of interactivity in today's show. We're going to be putting up a QR code, so please get your phones ready for that. We're going to be asking for your submission and your input on a number of poll questions to help us drive the conversation ultimately. So let's kick off with a couple of those questions. Professor Bloomfield and I are curious about who's going to be joining us and what industry you work in. So let's kick up this first one here. While we wait for that to populate, Rob, let's baseline our conversation. So we're here to talk about employee engagement, gamification. How does this course fit into teaching management accounting? Seems like an odd fit.
Yeah, so I have an unusual take on management accounting.
Yeah.
The first thing I tell my students is that accounting systems are problem-solving machines.
Yeah.
And they solve a certain type of problem. You know, if you just have a worker who's not smart or, you know, not strong enough or whatever, right, an accounting system isn't going to change who they are. But it's going to change the situation that they're in. And the problems that we solve are the ones where you say, you know, anyone that we put in this situation is going to have trouble succeeding. Mm-hmm. And so let's change the situation. So I'm seeing here, we've got, so if you're in higher education, which I am, here's a problem I know happens all the time, is you're trying to bring students in and you have the marketing team and the sales teams, or, admissions, sort of pointing fingers at one another. Because they just, it's not that people are jerks. It's that the system doesn't divide up responsibilities in a clean way. And so what I teach people how to do is, it's the course that I teach is Management Accounting for Leaders. And I teach people to lead deliberations on how to find that problem and fix it. Mm-hmm.
This is good to see. We have really solid representation, presumably a global audience here who are joining us from all industries. So I'm always encouraged by that. All right, next question. Here we go. Does your organization utilize gamification for engagement, training, in any capacity? So the answers to this question will, of course, be yes, my organization uses gamification, no, or I'm unsure. And that could very well be the case. You tell me why that could be the case, Rob.
Well, first, I just want to let people answer that before. Right. I don't want to distort their answers. Okay, but now we can see it's coming in.
Yeah.
And, primarily, no, a bunch of people unsure.
Yeah.
People tend to have the wrong sense of gamification,
right.
And we can get there. I want to stick with the deliberation just a little longer. But if the problem is that people aren't engaged with work, and it's not because of who they are and that they're lazy, it's because the system is just not in giving them the reason to be engaged, right? Anyone who's in that role is going to have trouble being engaged. You're going to pull out all the stops and, in short, as we'll talk about, appeal to their emotion in order to get them to work harder. And if, I think a bunch of the people, maybe they can still change their mind. And if you were saying, no, we don't use gamification, but then you realize your firm is working really hard to get you to care about the mission, to feel that your job is important, that fits my definition of gamification. And so, just to, if I could, just to sort of sketch out what we're going to do this hour.
Yeah.
Is really straight out of what I would do with my students and help them understand what to do, which is to figure out how to change the system and layer in these elements that will engage people's emotions. And it's a process of deliberation. And that's really what I teach is I teach people how to deliberate over how to improve an accounting system to make the world a better place, one little improvement at a time, and the process is always the same. I teach 22 topics. I've got 22 deliberation guides, and each one is just walking you through, well, we've got to gather information to identify the problem. We've got to translate it into accounting terms so that we can talk about it like accountants and use accounting tools to address those problems. And then we check our work and make sure, because no system is perfect. Every time you change a system, you think you're improving it, you have unintended consequences, and so you're always checking your work at the end. And so that's so here, right, we've got this deliberation guide that we're using for gamification, and right, people can get this, right?
This is a downloadable for our viewers. This is a multi-page PDF, I believe. So we're going to drop the URL for the deliberation guide. It's viewable, rather downloadable to everyone who's here today. So and share it as you see fit, right? You want
that's right. I'm teaching 140 executives, right now in one of our executive MBA programs, and my hope is they're all downloading these guides and going to work and saying, hey, I have something that might help right here. Let's sit down, talk about this over lunch.
So you had mentioned making a world a better place. Do you do more than teach people how to ultimately make profit for their organizations?
Yeah, I am. I take a very broad view of accounting. It is about holding people, right? It's creating the systems that are going to hold people accountable. Right? We're entrusting them with assets, with power, authority, all these things. They have obligations that come with those assets, and we need them to live up to those obligations. And it doesn't really matter whether those obligations are business obligations or social obligations or moral obligations. We're still going to we're going to translate any problems we see into the same accounting language, and we're going to use the same set of tools to improve the system and get people to do what they're obligated to do.
The big majority of our audience, we're at 47%, do not say that they don't. Their organization does not use gamification for engagement. Yeah. What are we talking about? Right. Okay. So we talked about it. Possibly coming in many stripes, and maybe you don't know that it's going on. But tell us how you think about it.
Yeah. So well, let me start with what I think most people think. The first thing that comes to their mind is, let's make work fun, right? Let's make work a game.
Yeah.
The problem I have with that is work is already a game, and in large part, it's a game because we create these accounting systems that hold people accountable. And so, just to pick an example of a specific role, let's just talk about a proofreader's job as a game. What are they doing, right? So they're, they've got a task in front of them, a challenging task. They have to go through the document and find all the errors, and they've got tools to do that. There's sort of rules by which they're going to do this.
Measured by the word or the character.
And then at the end, right, there, if they pass a document on and say it's clean and it has too many errors in it, which could be one error is too many, they lose. It's a game. It's just really not a fun one.
Yeah.
And so, but it is a game. Another way that I think is better, but still not great, another way people think about gamification is by looking at computer games and saying, let's just look at let's add in all the elements we see in these games and put them in the workplace so that it does feel more like a game, and specifically a modern age computer game. And I think this is a really powerful thing to do, and I understand you have my On Boardo video.
Yeah, we do.
So let's just, this is a quick video I made for my students that will give you a feel for what gamification could be.
Great, here we go.
Welcome to Humongo Corp's safety team. We'll be relying on you to keep our facilities safe from the comfort of your own home. I'm On Boardo, a bot dedicated to helping new employees get off to a good start. I see you have chosen the name The Great Safetini, or Safetini for short, and you've chosen this as your outfit for your first day. Excellent choices. I'm sure you'll fit in well here. Before I introduce you to your guild leader, let's introduce you to your interface. The center of your screen is the Opticon. That's where you'll get the camera feeds from the equipment you're controlling and the facility they're working in. And if you're in a video conference, feeds from the people you're meeting with. The top left of your screen is the portal to your guild. Click on it to see your guild leaders and fellow members. You can click through to see their current status and send and receive messages from any of them at any time. You can also see their badges, which show what tasks they're qualified to take on and what equipment and locations are open to them. Below your guild portal is your quest portal. Quests are tasks to do a specific thing in a specific location, like repairing a fume hood in Catalysis Lab 7. You can read your current quests as a list ordered by which should be done first, or you can view them on a map. You can also propose new quests when you see something that should be done but you aren't in a position to do it, either because you're busy with something else or it requires badges you don't have. If your guild leader approves your quest, you'll get bonus points. The equipment locker on the top right shows the equipment you can use. This is where you go to check out robots and other tools needed for your quests. Note that right now they're all locked because you haven't earned any badges yet, but you can try out anything in the simulator, which will earn experience points and knowledge points. All of the equipment is graded as bronze, silver, gold, platinum, ruby, emerald, sapphire, and diamond. No, that's not what it's made of, it's just how you level up. You have to get enough bronze badges before you can get a badge that lets you unlock a silver locker. The lower right side of your screen shows how you're doing. You can check on your experience points, knowledge points, and bonus points, and you can check out the leaderboard to see how you stack up against your other guild members and the other guilds. When you log in each day, you'll see whether you're competing with another guild that day or week, and what on. The competitions change all the time, so be sure to pay attention. Finally, on the bottom of the screen is your help portal.
I will say that I've never seen On Bordeaux or Rob Bloomfield in the same place at the same time. Sounds like you're pitched down a note or two.
They had fun with that. I love working with Cornell producers in the studio. They're very creative.
So we had the usual suspects as far as elements go, various forms of incentivization, scoring. It's effectively a dashboard. Can you tell us a little bit about how this thing might be used within an organization? I mean,
I think you hit on the first point, which is there's nothing in here really that you wouldn't see in any ordinary firm because, right, we call it career advancement and promotion. In gaming, it's called leveling up, but it's still the case that you get your experience, you demonstrate your experience, you demonstrate your knowledge, you get more authority to work with, bigger, more expensive tools and so on. And, right, and you get rewards and all of that. It's just adding, and this is my definition of gamification, is that you're really just adding some rhetoric, laying rhetoric on top of the systems that are already there. So, we don't always need rhetoric in accounting. If someone, if I lock my safe, I don't have to persuade people not to steal from it because they simply can't. But if I'm going to rely on what we usually rely on, reporting, incentives, accountability, that really is a rhetorical strategy. I need to persuade people that it's in their interest to work hard, to not steal from me, and so on. So Aristotle has these three elements of rhetoric, and the first one is logos, appealing to reason. And I'm basically saying, right, it's not enough to pay people for good performance. They have to know that you are paying them for good performance. And so, right, a lot of firms spend a lot of time making sure workers understand the reasons that they should work hard and do what their job is. But Aristotle had another element of rhetoric, which is pathos, appealing to emotion. And that's really what this On Boardo video is showing. It's taking the boring workplace and layering on some of these elements that really change how people feel about their work. And let me just, I think one of the clearest examples here is when we get to those knowledge points and experience points and leveling up. It makes it very immediate and very personal. You can go in and do a simulation and get some points right away, and it's really obvious that that is progress, and people are going to feel a sense of accomplishment. That's really the key.
One thing that I hadn't anticipated feeling going into watching the onboard video was the fact that it felt like I had more agency also. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That it encourages a proactivity. It encourages, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I think is a great sort of side effect. So let's go back to our proofreader. Mm-hmm. We're using this as a case study. We're going to ask our viewers this question right here, which is, what types of emotions do you think our proofreader is feeling as they go through the day, right? So I know that this is a setup for something. Let's see how our audience responds here. So really what we're looking for is one-word responses, 2 at most, and then we'll hit these.
Yeah, and I just want to say, while people are answering that, remember, you have a lot of words to choose from. How many words for emotion do you think there are in the English language? That list different types of emotions.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. So psychologists, there are all sorts of models, but the one I use in my deliberation guide has about 130, I think, and there are others that are more like 180. Yeah. They tend to break down into 6 basic categories, but people disagree about that too. Yeah, right. But just remember, here, so we have a word cloud. I'm not shocked that boredom is really high up there.
Yeah, redundant. There we go. But then, we have some positive curiosity. Supported, satisfaction, excitement all seem to be sitting on the one side there. Yeah. So interesting to note. You want to check out this emotion color wheel while we get into it?
Yeah. Why don't you? So
thanks for the responses there. What are we looking at here?
Yeah. So one of the most common ways to sort of organize our sense of emotion is with a wheel, because what this does is it lets us, there are all those words on the outside of the wheel that get at specific emotions, but then we can cluster them. And if you look at this one, now this is not the one I use in my deliberation guide, but I'd never seen this before you showed it to me, and I actually like this one a lot because it starts with just basically, the comfortable emotions and the uncomfortable emotions, and then we can split those. And this second group of 8 is more similar to what I've seen in the psych literature, which tends to focus on, fear, love, joy, things like that, anger. This is interesting because it's really very heavy on words describing how people feel that they are being treated by the others. Are they being respected? Are they being, valued? Just looking at this, loved, respected, valued, accepted. Do they feel brave, hopeful, powerful? That's a little bit more internal. But then on the other side, overwhelmed, powerless, and anxious. That's really, when I think of our proofreader, it's the pressure put on them by the system, making them do this task they don't personally want to do. They're only doing it because you are either forcing them to, or you are persuading them through logic and reasoning and saying, "Oh, you better do this, otherwise I'll fire you." That is not a way to engage workers.
Hey, can I say that a viewer question just came in?
Oh, sure.
I think it's a good one. Can you provide some examples and best practices for how small and medium enterprises can employ gamification in their business? So this was a question that I was going to ask. The sophistication of a gamification system as it relates to employee engagement is probably in line with the size of the organization and their resources and their capacity. But I don't know. Do you have any notes on that?
So I would say a gamification is going to tend to have a small scope. It's going to be small organization wide, and it's going to be small over time, because you just can't, games. You really need to tailor a game to a task at hand. So it's not something you're going to have this, a CEO is not going to gamify Apple. You just can't do that. But you could look at one, right? So, social media sites, they have a million things going on. One of the things they have going on is they need people to moderate content. That is something you could gamify. And yes, you're talking about an enormous company, but you can just do it in that small part of a company, and you're not going to do it forever, because it's going to get old and it's going to get outdated and no longer suited to your strategy. And this is sort of a general point with these accounting systems and this accounting. My approach to accounting is you cannot. Developing these systems is a leadership. It's a key element of leadership. It's integrated completely, if done well, into strategy and vision and values and all of that. And so you can't just leave it to the accountants. So if you're running a small, medium-sized business and you're interested in gamification, just have it work more from the bottom up. This might be a good time to talk about the first step in the deliberation, which is figuring out what the problem is and where it is. Mm-hmm. I like the Utrecht Work Engagement Survey.
What is this?
So this is a set of questions. You can do it in sort of a formal choose the slider and just ask these questions. How much do you feel this way? For most people, I think it's more helpful to just sit down and have interviews and talk with people. But what you're looking for with this survey is three things. The first is the degree of vigor. So, do people feel bursting with energy? Do they jump out of bed in the morning, and head into work? Or is everything sort of a drudge? And then the second is dedication, which is, how much do they really want to get the job done and done well? Or are they just doing it because it's a chore that's forced on them? And then the third is absorption, which is, is this when I'm writing or something like that, much of the time it's like the world falls away and I'm on a roll. And right now that I'm working more from home, it's my wife calling upstairs and saying, "Honey, it's 6:30. Are you coming down for dinner?" And I'm like, "Oh, I totally lost track of time." Yeah. That's absorption. Yeah. That doesn't happen when I'm grading papers. Then it's like any chance that I can be distracted by something, I'm going to take it. So basically, you go through and you ask people these questions that get at their vigor, their dedication, and their absorption, and you try to figure out, which is the problem and where, right? What tasks are really not engaging.
Good. Well, we've provided, turns out, the Utrecht engagement scale downloadable as well. So good. Yet another tool to use after we're through here today. Let's go back to our audience, Rob. Mm-hmm. Back to those pain points, right? We're going to ask the audience what tasks or roles in your workplace create your biggest problems with employee engagement.
And I'd encourage you to make it, specific and personal in the sense that, think about your day or the days of people and don't just say, it's not just work. It's, for me, I said it, it's grading. That is the one thing, if, paperwork's awful too, but grading can be a crushing bore.
One thing that certainly comes up, and this is, we're 3 years into the COVID era, and people are working remotely. Obviously, that sense of attachment, being valued as a team member, being heard as a team member, feeling accurately represented. But here comes some of the things that people don't prefer to do: interruptions, sure, rude customers, difficult conversations, data collection. And I think a lot of people sort of express this. It's the tedium, it's the grading that probably gets to the most people.
I'm
training.
That is. I wonder. Maybe some people can elaborate on what they mean if they said training. But maybe, like, I could imagine if you're in an industry, and we saw earlier, we have a lot of people in healthcare. We have a lot of people in industries where safety is an issue, like oil and gas, and so maybe what people are speaking to. Oh, and now it's getting smaller.
But this is a large data set here, and training is emerging as the biggest pain point.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear about that. But maybe what it means, like every once in a while, I have to do this. I have to do an hour-long thing to make sure I'm, not engaging in discriminatory practices. If I'm leading hiring or safety training, maybe that's what people are saying.
Or my coworkers are incompetent and not able to do the job.
And I have to train them.
I guess
maybe
it could be. So if you have questions related to training,
but I'll just say, so now if you look at these, a lot of these things are sort of rote, low level tasks, and that does tend to be it's again, right, all the world's a game, but they're just not fun games, and that's they just don't grab us emotionally. And that's what gamification is all about. Not so much fun as any of those lists of emotions.
Viewer Jay asks if gamification is used as a vehicle often for sales training. I think the answer is yes, probably. If you were to say that there was one aspect, one job function, let's take sales, marketing, leadership, HR, whatever, where gamification lends itself to the most, effectiveness, efficacy, whatever.
Well, so first there's sort of a sweet spot of disengagement where it's going to have the biggest bang for the buck, because if people are already engaged, you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
If people are really alienated, adding a little bit of rhetoric is not going to solve your problem.
Sure.
You really need people to be somewhat engaged, sort of to want to be engaged, and they're just not feeling it. And so I think, just look at, right. So many of these words have boredom built right into them. Who gets excited talking about administrative tasks or compliance, or meetings? Gamifying a meeting is tricky. But, a lot of this is mundane, repetitive stuff. One thing that I'll just emphasize again is because this is an accounting approach, we're talking about creating a system. So it's not going to address one person's one problem because they're them. It's going to address the problems that lots of people, like basically anyone you put in this role, is going to have this problem over and over. And so that's, step one again, is to just ask around, figure out where you have this problem. Looking at these types of tasks is probably a good start.
So getting back to our guide, you had talked about identifying your rhetorical strategy. You talked about Aristotle and rhetoric a few minutes ago. What do you mean by rhetorical strategy?
So rhetoric is just how we persuade people. And as I said before, you persuade people with reasons. You persuade people by appealing to their emotions. Any of you who are in a company where you've got a charismatic leader who gives attaboy, attagirl speeches, and that's a big part of leadership. That's appealing probably to your emotions, and probably also appealing to what is called ethos, their own character. That they're basically saying, they're going to persuade you to work hard because you believe in them, that you want to be like them, or you want to please them, or you believe in the mission, the character of the organization as a whole. And firms work a lot on this rhetorical strategy. And so that's an element of gamification that you see all the time. It's also one of the reasons gamification can go badly awry, because you can't just gamify something and appeal to people's emotions without thinking about how you're appealing to your own character, to the character of the company as a whole. So yeah, if I want to get my proofreader to be more engaged, a real simple thing we could do is use an element of drama called spectacle. We can just, every time they do something and do it really well, or not, excuse me, not, here would be a fun one, right? Every time you give someone a document, there's a chance that there's an error that was put in there on purpose to see if they'd catch it. And if they catch it, then confetti rains down their computer screen and they hear some happy music and they get a gift certificate for, pizza for the family or whatever. Yeah. That's probably fine if we're proofreading children's books, but if we're, if our job is proofreading, obituaries and eulogies or something, it is inconsistent with the character that we want to demonstrate, that we are, somber and empathetic and all of that. And that's one of the reasons that a lot of people say we don't do gamification and we don't like that. It's because it just runs. No, look, we're serious here. We wear suits, not Superman capes. Right. And so that can, you really need to think carefully about how you gamify.
In our pregame huddle up the other day, you had talked about the flow state. What is flow?
So flow. So there. There's a guy whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce on the air.
I'm going to give it a shot.
Okay.
It's Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi.
Yeah, like Csikszentmihalyi. I think it's Hungarian, so you drop most of the sounds. Right. But anyway, so he has this idea of a flow state, which is about absorption. It's about how you get absorbed, and artists, elite artists and athletes and writers, right? It's when you just get you're being really productive and enjoying yourself and not even thinking and consciously exerting yourself. It's almost more like it's coming out of you. And that's a great thing to try to get. Now, in game design, the flow channel is a little bit different. The idea is that, look, what we're doing is we're appealing to people's emotions. And, okay, here's a great emotion, joy. But are we really going to be able to engage a worker by having them feel joy 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, or whatever? No one can do it. So instead, what you do is you sort of, you need a cadence to their emotion, and you need to mix it up. So, what you're showing on the screen here is the common flow channel image used in game design, and the idea is this only really deals with two emotions, anxiety and boredom. And the idea is that if you one of the things to understand is that just for game design, right? These people who build games and sell them to you, right? They need them to be incredibly engaging, because you are paying them to work, basically, in their game. And so they pull out all the stops, and that's why a lot of lessons come from game design. This one is about just getting people, what you want over the course of a game is that people get better, that they actually show improvement. So you present them with challenges, they solve them, now they have new skills. But you have to mix it up. And so what happens in a lot of games is it's really tough, right? At first, you're figuring everything out, and they will throw some obstacles at you, and it's going to be they're easy if you had experience, but you don't. So they're really challenging, and you grip your controller too hard, and and then they ease off a little, and they let you enjoy the sense of accomplishment, of mastery. But at some point that gets boring. Let's crank it up again. And so it's we're dealing with a wheel of a whole bunch of emotions, but the principle is still the same. So if you want to give people that sense of accomplishment, it's not really going to feel earned unless they have some anxiety and uncertainty about whether they're actually going to be able to get it done in the challenging time frame or whatever you've set. Mm-hmm. So you want them to be going through these very, a range of emotions in a way you've plotted out.
Which takes us to the next step in the guide, which is to then map and enhance existing drama. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's right. So work is filled with drama, and I don't just mean, people screaming at one another or whatever. I mean it in the technical sense. Drama has a bunch of elements that are studied by people in the humanities. Right? You have characters, who take on roles, and there's a plot, and it takes place in a setting, and there's spectacle. All of these things are just standard in drama, and so that's what we're really trying to do here. So I'm just thinking my leveling up experience, right? I was. First, I became Rob Bloomfield, PhD, but then I got a job, and I leveled up from assistant professor to associate professor to full professor to now I'm the Nicholas H. Noyes Professor of Management and Professor of Accounting, which is a great honor, but it's really a pretty boring, uninspiring set of job titles. Maybe I should be, problem slayer, grade 6 or whatever. People. It's just any of these. The drama is there. It's already, just like the game is there. The drama's already there. We just want to punch it up.
Mm-hmm. Problem slayer. Yeah, I bet Cornell Brand Communications would be.
Yeah,
get an email the next morning.
Maybe I will ask ChatGPT for some suggestions.
There you go. That'll work. Speaking of naming, so let's do another exercise with our audience here, which is if you were to gamify your job title, viewers, what would you like for your next promotion? Let's see how this shakes out. I think we even get a better sense of what people's jobs are like. We were kind of joking around. There was a time on LinkedIn where everyone was a marketing ninja, and ninja seemed to be overplayed or overused. But, can you really do that? A lot of people, for their LinkedIn profiles, will have fun with it a little bit, right? They have a formal title, but you can kind of play around with it a little bit. I was this close to adding dishwasher to mine because I seem to do a lot of that with kids, and that's just how I spend my time. But so here comes one. Head peon. There you go.
I also my wife once had to fill out a form when she was home with the kids, and she had to list her profession, and it was something like entropy containment engineer.
ECE, yeah. Here we go.
So these people are much better at this than I am.
Yeah, monkey wrangler. There we go.
Yep. So, and you know what? I'll say, so what I am seeing here,
doer of the things.
It is giving me a sense, you're really okay, like kitten herder.
Yeah.
I can imagine what this person's job is like. That they have a number of people working under them who are hard to, right? They're not that experienced and they're not that on track. And so just, right, layering in this element of drama and just zhuzhing it up a bit is a way to get at the emotions, how people are actually seeing their job, and and it's a great starting point for trying to say, okay, if that's what my job is really like, how can I, especially right, the kittens. Yeah. Right? Why are the kittens doing what they're doing? And can you just speak directly to them and give them a description of their job that helps them understand why they're there and make them want to do what you need to herd them to do?
Yeah, there's so much in there. Professional pest, right? That's that person's job function.
Do we get the data from
Yeah, we'll
this?
look at this afterward. Yeah. We could steal these. Lovely job. Thanks, audience, for that. What other elements of drama should people look at, right? So we've got certainly this aspect.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. Setting is one to think about. Yeah. Setting and spectacle are in some ways the easiest because you're not actually changing the game or the underlying drama. You're just adding in, literally, in the case of spectacle, you're adding in bells and whistles and things like that. Like my number one wish in my teaching, I have students do a bunch of quizzes on Canvas, a learning management site. They're all online. I want the confetti when they do well on a quiz. I don't want it just to be, I got a 95. I want someone to sing them praise.
How do you do that?
And you do that by, you're right. If I were Canvas, I would put in these options and give them badges and things like that. And this is, I wanted to go back to this notion of working small. And you want to make everything very immediate. That's a big part of gaming, is quick feedback. Not, that annual performance review is a terrible practice anyway, but it's totally ungamified. And so what, if you break things down into badges, and so people aren't, marketing ninjas, but if you give them a badge for some particular expertise, and I'm not a marketing expert, but I know these days when you get into digital marketing, it's like very niche, and someone will be really good at this particular thing.
Sure.
And if you can name that and say, and get that on people's resumes and have everyone understand that they're a platinum level whatever, right? That is a good place to start.
I just want to mention to our audience, we've got several good questions that have come in here, but keep them coming if you like. One step in the guide is to connect tasks to purpose. What do you mean by that? I think I understand it, but you were just talking about the small work.
Yeah, and that's really a crucial point of gamification, is that And this again is why I don't like it. Let's we're making work a game. It's probably better to think that we're giving work purpose. Right? That's the deep emotion, right? We're trying to tap into human nature, and having purpose in life is really engaging. And there's this great story told, which I'm sure is not true, told about John F. Kennedy. He said, we're going to put people on the moon, and we did in like 7 years. It was ridiculously fast. No one really thought that it would be possible. He was touring one of NASA's facilities over the weekend at night, and he sees a janitor and asks, why are you here mopping the floors late on a Saturday night, and again, too good to be true.
Yeah.
But the guy said, "I'm not mopping the floors. I'm putting a man on the moon."
Yeah.
He could clearly see that, right? If the floors aren't mopped, there will be dust particles and it'll ruin sensitive electronic equipment or whatever.
Yeah.
And he could see that exact connection. And the first step in building a connection of every task, and especially these sort of, what we think of as, the ones on the list early on that everyone thinks are pretty terrible. To get people to connect those to a very narrow, concrete aspiration of the organization. So, like, just to stick with NASA for a minute, they actually had 3 big things they wanted to do. They wanted to explore the solar system, they wanted to advance science, and they wanted to foster national defense.
Yes.
Well, I feel sorry for all of you who have sat in a room debating mission statements and how are you going to phrase this and that, but that's going to end up being a boring mission statement because there's too much in it. They ended up narrowing it down first to exploring the solar system, and then putting a man on the moon became their singular, narrow organizational aspiration. It doesn't mean that they didn't care about the national defense and the science. It's just that would come along. All of that would come if they just put a man on the moon. Yeah. And everyone understands putting a man on the moon. It's very concrete, right? You can see the guy in the outfit on the moon in a crater. You can feel the heat of the flames of the rocket, that's going to send them up. It's very visceral. This narrow aspiration does 2 things. One is you can work your whole strategy around it. I've done that. When I kicked off this hour, I was talking about, look, I'm trying to teach my students one thing, which is to lead deliberations on how to improve these accounting systems to make the world a better place, one improvement at a time. But that sounds like an accountant wrote it. That is not concrete.
Yeah. What
are you picturing in your head? If anything, it's a bunch of boring people around a boring conference table having a boring conversation.
Sure.
So if I take my own advice and gamify that narrow aspiration, right, I'm going to make it concrete. And I'm going to, I'm going to tell them that they are superheroes. It's like the old, Mighty Mouse, here I come to save the day.
Sure.
Anywhere sales and marketing are pointing fingers at one another, anywhere capacity is being held, is being idle and unused, we will be there to hold people accountable, improve the division of responsibility, blah, blah, blah. And now they can maybe picture a superhero in a cape, and that helps me. Forgetting about the gamification for a moment, it helps me look at everything I'm asking. Michael Porter said the essence of strategy is knowing what not to do. If it doesn't help me make them these superheroes, leading deliberation and addressing all these different problems, I'm taking it out of my course. I only want to serve that goal. And then for them, the more concrete I make it, the more they can say, God, here I'm doing this quiz on, variable versus absorption costing. I need them to see how that's going to help them become a superhero. And so that's how that plays out.
There was a Kennedy quote associated with that moon mission, and maybe you can help me. Somebody said, why are you doing it? He said, we're doing it because we can't or we can. Which one was it?
I don't know, but I do know
it was a big thing. It was aspirational.
Yes, it was. Yeah. It was definitely aspirational. There were a million reasons they would never be able to do it in time. Yeah. And I'll say, if you go through the deliberation guide, there are we're getting toward the end of our hour, so I don't want to get into the details. But there's this whole process of, after you narrow your aspiration and make it really concrete, then there are additional steps where you just keep on drawing that line between, from specific tasks to the higher purpose. And again, what you are doing, if you give people a sense of purpose and they feel like they're putting a man on the moon, that's just much more engaging, even if it's a menial task. That's what really matters.
Yeah, exactly. Our audience has been kind of next level as far as the interactivity goes. This is a good one here. About distilling your organization's aspiration into a single concrete goal. I've given a guideline of a word or two.
So you're going to do this more as a word cloud?
I think so. Yeah.
Let's
see how this one goes too.
Yep.
So what use would this have? You would kind of just described it, right? You make it about one thing, but it's about many things.
It's just think about drama. Like if you ever I'll say my brother is in the business. He's in Hollywood, movie lawyer, and he reads a lot of scripts and talks a lot about. And if you've ever seen shows about show business, what is the advice? Oh, you need your instigating act, the thing that drives the whole story. You need it on like page 3
Inciting
of the
incident.
script. Inciting that's. You need characters that people care about. And this is, coming up with this concrete goal. That people, there's so much psychology showing that concrete language, and especially sensory language, is just much more powerful, much more memorable. And you want people just to remember this one concrete purpose that they are ultimately serving, even if they are just doing proofreading. Right? You're proofreading for children's books, but maybe the single aspiration of a children's book company is to create, make the next generation better than the last. And all of a sudden now you feel like you're doing something meaningful.
Mm-hmm. So what are we seeing on this exercise? It's really interesting. What we see is thought processes playing out, right? Some are, here's what we do, right? Revitalize downtown.
And so I think it's
feed people.
I think it is tough to do in two words to make it concrete, but I would just say this is hard. Like I really struggled, obviously, with my superhero analogy. It's kind of okay, but not great. But it's we see this in teaching. So I've worked very closely with the instructional designers at Cornell. And one of the things, because faculty, right? This is the big, open secret. Faculty are never taught how to teach.
Yes.
But they taught me how to teach. And one of the big, the first piece of advice is when you set out a learning objective, it needs to be something people can do. Right, so mine is lead deliberations. That's an activity. It's not an idea. It's not that they're going to understand something or know something. It's they're going to do something.
Yeah.
And so some of these,
create storytellers.
Yeah, like storytelling for change. Like that. That's one that captures my imagination. Oh, world on our stage.
Serve and protect.
Right. So that's one that now has become, maybe it's so cliched. You want to, create storytellers. These are the things. Making memories. I can feel that one.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Rob. Any shining examples in the world? Fortune 500 companies, small companies, anybody that's doing this really well, that is something that we could observe as viewers after we're through today. I don't know. Any companies jump out at you that you have maybe worked with in the past?
Here's what I would recommend.
Okay.
Is rather, you can look stuff up and you'll, but first of all, as I said before, that this is not typically a corporate-wide activity. This is like, what I really like about this, and I hope, some of the people in your audience will take me up on this, is you can just look around your department and say, you know what, no one wants to do X. Let's create a competition. All right. Let's do the little stuff. Technology is changing the game. And so anyone who wants to follow up on this, look for a video by a guy named Jesse Schell, Schell, and it's called "When Games Invade Real Life," and he's one of the most famous game designers in the world, and it's just his vision. It's now, I think it's like a decade old, so you might think it's dated, but he just walks through what life could be like when professional game designers get hold of all these apps that we're using and phones. You know what? You were talking about Twitter.
Yeah.
And I just want to say Twitter is massively gamified. It sounds like you're a lurker. You're a reader, not a writer. But
more of it, yeah.
The people who get into the writing, they live for those retweets and those likes.
4 metrics beneath every post.
Yeah,
or 3.
and it becomes addictive. It gets into your mind and your heart.
Yeah.
And if you look at gamification there on the consumer side, you see amazing examples. With 4 minutes, I kind of like to. I want to make sure we get to some caveats, some of the problems to look out for.
Very good idea.
I want to tell a story that comes from one of my EMBA students who,
what's EMBA?
Executive MBA. It's we have several executive MBA programs. I've taught in all of them. I can't remember which program this person was in.
Okay.
But they were in this gamified accounting department where, at the end of, traditional accounting department, at the end of every quarter, it would be this mad scramble to get everything ready to issue, the financial reports, and everyone needed to help everyone. So they added this one tiny little element of gamification, which is if someone helped you, you could take this little gold star. Everyone is given a bunch of gold stars. You could take this gold star and you could put it next to their name on this public display in the office kitchen. It worked wonderfully for 3 quarters. But then the competition sort of got the better of people, and people started, like, those who had a bunch of gold stars they wanted to be at the top. So they got a little stingy handing theirs out. And then people were disgruntled because they helped someone and didn't get a star. And so people started holding grudges, and they had to stop it.
Right.
So one of the lessons here is that, I guess first, if you treat people like third graders, they might start behaving like third graders, and that's something you need to watch out for.
Yeah.
But also just that these things can take on a life of their own. It doesn't last forever. You really need to balance. Remember, we're playing with people's emotions. So in a way, in one sense, we're playing with fire, and in the other sense, we really have an obligation to treat them well. We can't make these games emotional torture. So we don't want them competing with one another because it hurts the business, but we also have to actually think about how we're treating the people we're governing in our accounting system.
So as far as our conversation today, how does this figure into the management accounting certificate that we were talking about before? We're going to share the URL here. So
yeah.
How much do you dedicate to gamification within this certificate?
Yes, so I've got 6 courses, each dedicated to improving one facet of performance. So it's like improving governance, improving margins, efficiency and coordination, strategy and direction, so at the very end, it's actually just organization in the fourth industrial revolution. We, in the last course, we are just, it's a sea change, right? We've got AI, bots, algorithms, working from home, outsourcing to, basically we're hiring people who are going to be managed by an app. And we have gamification. And all of this technology fosters it wonderfully. And all of it, it turns out, really doesn't, the same accounting framework, these issues of accountability, it doesn't change. So we're still applying the traditional, how, right? Here are the two questions. How are we going to hold people to account, and how are we going to get a good account of their performance that we can use to figure out how to hold them to account? And these are timeless. Accountants have spent thousands of years refining how we do this. And technology, we need to understand how to apply this to technology, but the theory, the principles really don't change.
I feel like you've set us forth on a path toward changing just the way we think about our work. Just broadly speaking, there's so much more to do. I feel like there's a sequel here.
I have spent the last 3 years working on this new, accountability-centered approach to accounting. It's really, surprisingly, no one has done this before. It has completely changed the way I see my work, even my social life, politics. It's just... It applies everywhere. Every newspaper article that has bad news in it, look for the accountability failure. That's,
Yeah, mistakes were made. Rob Bloomfield, always illuminating to have you in. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
And thanks to all of you for giving us so much great content.
Yeah, thanks, viewers. We couldn't have done it without you. Thanks so much. Stay strong, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.